Hello everybody and welcome back to Growing in the Cove. My name is Stacy and I garden in Zone 5B, Newfoundland. So today I thought I would make a video on some of the jobs that I will be doing in the garden, both indoors and outdoors in April. It's really funny that only 2 days ago I was out weeding my garden and I got so much work done, had my hands in the soil. And now 2 days later, we are covered in a blanket of snow again. The good news is it is melting and it's not going to stick around for long, but this is a typical Newfoundland spring. Actually, it's been a lot milder than we've seen in past years and we had a really mild winter, but this is very typical for Newfoundland to get a random snowfall at any time. So if you're interested to see what I will be doing in the garden, please keep watching. It is so nice to be inside this greenhouse. It's right now, I think about 14 degrees Celsius in here. And my watch says it is, how cold? -1 outside, going to a low of -5 today. So everything in this greenhouse is doing really well. I think it was my last video. I did give a tour of my greenhouse because I love to put cold weather crops in here before I'm ready for all my warm season plants like tomatoes and peppers, and everything is really thriving. So if you do have an unheated greenhouse that's not in use and you are waiting until the end of May or early June before planting it up with your warm weather crops, I really encourage you to throw some lettuce seeds in a pot or some spinach, arugula. There's so many things that you could be growing right now, and it's just amazing to be eating fresh produce when there's still snow on the ground. So that's my first PSA. The first thing that I want to talk about is the seeds that I'm going to be starting this month. So April is a big seed starting month for me, and I'm actually going to be starting tomatoes in a couple of days. So we're kind of hovering at the 8 weeks before our last frost-ish, somewhere in that range. I do have people ask me, what's your last frost date? And I really can never give a good answer on that because it's pretty inconsistent. I tend to consider around after the first week of June. I'll say around June 7th is our last frost, but that's not a guarantee. It could be mid-June. And I believe a couple of years ago, it was June 20th, we had a random frost overnight. So I'm gonna call this time around the 8 weeks before our last frost. So I'm gonna tell you what I'm going to be starting from seed in the next couple of days. So I like to try and stay organized by putting the seeds that I will be sowing in the near future in this little seed box. So I am going to be starting tomatoes very soon. This will be the latest time that I have ever started tomatoes. Traditionally, I start my tomatoes in March. But this year, I thought I would stick to trying what's recommended, and that's 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost to start tomatoes. And the reason that I'm doing this, besides the fact that it's what's recommended by most people, is that last year I ended up starting a tomato plant really late. And it's because I was waiting on the seeds to come in the mail, and they didn't come until I think it was mid-April or late April. So they had a really late start. And these tomato plants went in here in my greenhouse at about this tall. They were really small, but they were really stocky and sturdy. And even though they had a slower start, this tomato plant ended up getting humongous and got bigger than all of my earlier started tomatoes and actually produced way more tomatoes. So this is a little bit of an experiment, even though it has taken some self-restraint. Yeah, we'll see how this turns out. So, and also, if you have grown tomatoes before, the seedlings will grow really fast. So they kind of get out of hand indoors under grow lights, and they get really tall. They can get leggy. You need to put them in bigger pots because they outgrow their containers. So yeah, I'm just doing a later start this year, and we'll see how I do. So I'm a little bit obsessed with tomatoes. I wish I was as successful with them as I hope every year. I think tomatoes are one of the things that people are most excited to grow. And even beginner gardeners will go to a garden center and buy some tomato plants or buy them off someone on Marketplace. And that's one thing that tends to sow the seed of excitement for most people. I do find that I don't get as many tomatoes as I would like. So I'm gonna try really hard to get a huge yield of tomatoes this year. So without further ado, because I'm tomato obsessed, I'm growing a lot of varieties this year. Some of them will be in this greenhouse, some of them will be planted outside. And really, if my biggest concern is yield, I really should be growing as many early varieties as possible. Because I am in a cold climate, the issue with getting an 80-day tomato is that can bring me sometimes into September and into the fall before they're actually producing fruit. I do have a mix of maturity dates here though, so I will not delay any longer. So I am growing the tomato Cherry Falls. This is a fantastic little dwarf tomato that I've been growing for years. It kind of cascades down over a pot, and they are delicious and very similar to a tumbling Tom if you've grown that one before, or if you're familiar with that. It's pretty popular. I may grow a few Tiny Tims. Tiny Tims are not the sweetest tomato. They are a really short plant, like they are under a foot, but they are good to sneak into little places or into containers, or if you do have, like I said, a small space, you can stick a Tiny Tim in there. So that's why I'm growing those. I've got the Scotia Bush tomato. This is a really popular variety for my area, and I've never grown it before. So I'm actually planning on planting these outside in my garden to see how I can do with some non-greenhouse tomatoes. I may or may not be trying the San Marzano again. I had incredible yields with this tomato last year, and I made a lot of tomato sauce out of it. But I'm also going to be trialing some different paste tomatoes. So will I or won't I? I don't know. I've got Esterina. This is a yellow cherry. I've never tried this one before, so we'll see. Apparently it's really sweet. I've got the Castelluto Genovese, and this is a beautiful ribbed Italian tomato. So this was the tomato that I started really late last year, and it was really tiny, and it ended up producing so many tomatoes. So I like this one because it can be a slicer or you can use it in sauce. I also have, I'm very excited for this one. This is by a Canadian seed breeder, tomato breeder, and her name is Karen Olivier. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. And she her program is called True North Tomatoes. And she has bred some tomatoes for Canadian climates. So this one is called One Trick Pony. I will include a picture, but they describe it as bright, almost pink burgundy beefsteak fruits hang in abundance on vining indeterminate plants. So they also have some beautiful oxheart tomatoes in these bicolors, and they're like, her tomatoes are just stunning. So I sourced these through this company from Nova Scotia called So Local Seeds, and I believe her tomatoes are still available on there. She has a lot of different varieties, and I'm excited to give One Trick Pony a try. I've also got Supremo tomato. This is a sauce tomato as well, and this is on a shorter plant, so it's a bush type as well. I've got the Amish paste. This is what I am thinking I'm going to replace my San Marzanos with this year, because I have heard that they are a lot bigger tomatoes and more productive. So we will see. The snow is falling off the roof of my greenhouse. I've also got this cherry tomato called Sakura, and I've just heard a lot of great things about this. I think it's a larger cherry tomato, so instead of really tiny ones, they are more of almost like a, maybe closer to a golf ball size, but I've heard really good things, so I'm excited about that. I've got the black cherry tomato. This is probably one of the most popular cherry tomatoes. I have grown chocolate cherry in the past and I've loved it, so I'm gonna give this one a go. I've got the black Crimean tomato. This is also called Black Sea Man tomato, and this is a determinant slicer, and it's one of those dark purple tomatoes, which are some of my favorites because they have more of a smoky umami flavor rather than a bright acidic tomato taste. They have like a depth to them, which I love. They're incredible on a tomato sandwich. And I have Vantage tomato. This is, as far as I'm aware, a Newfoundland specific tomato that was grown by a gardener named Ross Traverse, who used to have a gardening show, and he's written a lot of gardening books, and he has kind of kept this tomato in production, and it used to be a greenhouse tomato that's been grown here in St. John's, Newfoundland since the 50s. It's hard to find, but he has kept it in circulation, so I'm excited to try this tomato. So if you're still with me after my TED Talk on tomato varieties, I appreciate it. So I'm not going to blab on like that about the rest of the seeds I'm going to be starting. I'm just going to cover them real quickly. So I'm also going to be starting some annual flowers as well. So what I'm planning on starting in the next few days, this is new to me. This is gazania. I've never grown it before, but apparently it does really well in containers. So that's why I'm going to try some of these. I may start some gomphrena. I think it's also called globe amaranth. So these kind of look like little clovers, but they make a really pretty dried flower. So I'm kind of toying with starting it, but I'm not sure yet. This is an annual that I grow every year, lobelia. It is so easy to grow from seed. It looks incredible in pots. It does well in part shade, which is surprising to find something that does well in full sun and part shade and still performs equally as well. It trails over the sides of pots and it just provides so much color. So I've been growing this one for years. No, this one, sapphire trailing. I still have so many seeds, but I wanted to see the difference between these two. Only a garden nerd like me would want to compare varieties that look pretty much the same. So I've got the sapphire trailing, which I've grown before, and I also have blue cascade, and I think these look beautiful. I also have a white lobelia, so I'll be starting that. I'm also going to be starting some coleus. This is another really nice annual that I start for pots, and again, I like that they do really well in shady areas. So it's really nice to brighten up a shadier spot of your yard or your garden by having really colorful things in a shady pot. And I've already started marigolds last week, but if you are planning on starting marigolds, April is a great time. So that's what I'm going to be starting from seed in the next few days. When it comes to mid-April, so when we get to the 6 weeks before our last frost, which is going to be somewhere around the 2nd or 3rd week of April, I'm going to be starting cosmos, amaranth, nasturtiums, ageratum, and possibly tithonia, which is Mexican sunflower. So I'm probably going to bring you along with me when I start some of those, because I know a lot of people are interested in starting some cut flowers. You will notice that sunflowers have not been mentioned, and zinnias have also not been mentioned. I put those off until May, and that is because they grow so fast in their trays that you really don't need any more than about 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks before your last frost before starting those, in my experience. So I'm going to be planting some seeds this month. Another thing I'm doing so much of is planting up tiny transplants. So when I start a whole bunch of seeds in a small container like this, I can't keep them in this because there's not enough room to grow. So I've been doing so much transplanting into bigger containers, which then makes me realize how many seedlings I actually have. And I have a real problem with culling any healthy looking seedlings, because when they're so healthy, how could I just let them die? So for example, this is Canterbury Bells, or Campanula, which is a biennial, and I'm going to be potting this up into bigger pots today. And because this is cold hardy, I'm actually going to be putting this out here in the greenhouse to continue growing, and it will be just fine. And that's the good thing about starting my cool flowers, I think in my last video or 2 videos ago, is that now this month, all of those cool flowers that are started under my grow lights will come out here to the greenhouse. And it will give me a lot more room indoors for keeping my warm weather loving things alive. So another thing I'm going to be doing, and I did this yesterday, although I have 2 that I forgot about, is I am potting up dahlia tubers. Now, it is not totally necessary that you start them ahead of time. Last year I had a baby and I was really busy, so I did not do this, and I planted my tubers directly in the ground somewhere, I think it was the end of May I planted them in the ground. The only disadvantage of that is that you are going to be waiting a lot longer on them to bloom. So I think it was the end of August, early September before I got a lot of blooms. So this year I am starting them under my grow lights, and I'm going to give them an early start and pre-sprout them in pots so they'll be ready to plant out as little plants out in the garden. But you don't have to do that. So this is a new one for me. This is totally tangerine. I think this is beautiful. This is an anemone style dahlia. And that's what it means when they kind of have this little powder puff center. And apparently the bees go crazy over this one. It doesn't make a great cut flower, and I'm okay with that, but it's this beautiful sunset peachy coral. It's just stunning. So I'm going to be planting up these totally tangerine dahlias. And one word of caution about buying dahlias from a garden center or a big box store: these are Dutch imported tubers. So unfortunately, these tubers can carry disease, and a lot of them carry gall, which is a type of virus that can be transmitted to dahlias, and it makes them sick, and it can easily pass to all of your healthy dahlia tubers. So I'm always very cautious when I purchase these big box store dahlias, and I tend to grow them in a pot for 2 years to make sure that there's nothing funky going on with them before I'll put them with the rest. I know that's a pain, but I would hate to lose all of my dahlia tubers because I put one of these in with them. So I'm also going to be starting some begonias. Again, I love doing containers, and I grow everything in my containers of annuals. I grow everything myself. So I picked these up. These are double dark red begonias, and I think they're going to be so pretty. So I'll be giving those an early start. I've also got some cannas. I I grew a canna years ago, but I really didn't have it in a big enough pot and it didn't do very well. But this is Angelique. And what I like about this is it's got these dark, almost black leaves with the coral flowers. Really pretty. What else do I need to tell you? Oh yes. So another thing on my list is to go to the garden center and get seed potato and any other bare roots that I may be looking for. I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to be growing food this year, just with all of the uncertainty and the trade war that's going on. I do think that you're going to see a lot of produce going up in price, and hopefully this encourages people to try and grow more of your own food. It's a great pastime, and I just think the more people gardening, the better. So now is a really good time. You'll see a lot of the garden centers are bringing out things like their seed potato, bare root strawberries, bare root asparagus, and it's a good time to get those things even though it's too early to plant. When you get them, put them in a cool, dark place, down in a basement or something until you're ready to get them. So actually today I'm going to be going on the hunt for some seed potatoes of a variety I am looking for this year. So that's everything that I'm going to be doing in April. I think my next video will be a seed starting video, and yeah, let me know what your jobs are for April. And if you would like to help out my channel, you can hit the subscribe button, you can like my video, you can share my video with others, or you can leave a comment in the comments section down below. I've gotten a lot of comments from people in the last few videos, and I've loved chatting back and forth. So thank you so much to everybody who's been watching and supporting me. It means so much to me. So thanks so much for watching, and until next time, bye.